Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. We will go to item number 84. Consider adoption of proposed ordinance adding Chapter 7.130 to the Santa Cruz County Code regarding regulating the licensings of medical cannabis dispensaries and take related actions as recommended. In the memo of the County Administrative Officer, we have a red-line version of Chapter 7.130 and a clean version of Chapter 130.
And I'm going to cover this morning very briefly. As you will remember, on May 24th, your board considered an ordinance amending Section 7.130 of the County Code relating to the licensing of dispensaries. As you mentioned, there is both a red line and a clean copy of the ordinance included in today's material. It does provide conformity with the MRSA requirements and the licensing regulations that your board has been discussing. It provides provisions for security, record keeping, and inventory control. It includes clarifications of various setback requirements per the discussion of your board. It sets application dates, provides information on background and live scan provisions, and it clarifies regulations for the consumption of cannabis by dispensary operators. In addition to that, there are a number of definitions that have also been clarified. There is one policy question that arose, and that has to do with the effective date for disqualification under the live scan provisions. We would ask that we set a date of either 2014 or 2016 for the reasons that are briefly discussed in the letter, and we'd be happy to provide any other additional information if you'd like to discuss that further. Phase 2 is also something your board directed us to consider when we might consider a Phase 2 dispensary licensing process. You asked us to review the possibilities for options. Unfortunately, due to the press of business in preparing the budget, the cultivation registration program, the cultivation licensing program, the tax on cannabis issues, and the Phase 1 licensing provisions, what we'd like to do is come back later in the fall in order to present some ideas about how we might approach a Phase 2 program. And that would include the request from Supervisor Coonerty to consider targeting women and disabled and minority-owned businesses. There are some legal prohibitions in that area, but we'd like to be able to go through them and see what kind of recommendations we could make, and also to consider the request of Supervisor Leopold to review the Veterans Alliance as part of this effort as well. So we'd like to come back certainly by the end of the year and do that. We want to get through all of these other tasks, which will take us well into the fall, and then we'll be able to devote some additional time to presenting options to your board to determine whether you're interested in a Phase 2 program at this juncture. So with those introductory remarks, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I know there are a few people here. I'm not sure if they wish to speak this morning, but this is to comply with all the requests you made at your last meeting.
Okay. We will first we'll open it up to the public to see if they have any comments on this issue. Anybody from the public would like to address us on this?
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Jason Sweat, Director of the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. I'm asking the Board to reconsider adding us to the Phase 1. We're kind of in a hard spot with MRSA coming in effect next year, and if we don't have the ability to obtain a dispensary license here in the county, we will not be able to apply for the state license, and therefore we would not be able to service our veterans. Right now we have 234 veterans that we service here, and we meet, twice a month, and these veterans receive free medicine because they are disabled, low income, and they're looking for an alternative to the pharmaceutical medicine that the VA prescribes. So I ask for you to reconsider adding us to the Phase 1, and look forward to seeing you guys in the future.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address us on that?
Hello, I'm Albert Brett, and I'm from Idaho. I've been out here since October, and I'm a Vietnam veteran who is a survivor of pancreatic cancer. And I'm also, am now in oncology over at Stanford. But I'm also a disabled American veteran with post-traumatic stress, quite severe. It's come out since my cancer, more severely. I no longer take the VA pharmaceuticals because I've been fighting my cancer, and winning, by the way, by using Rick Simpson oil, which is very concentrated. It's being manufactured similarly here by Wham over on the Hill. And the Veterans Alliance has the abilities to do it as well. I need medicine. I take about 500 milligrams a day. It fights my post-traumatic stress, but it's keeping me from the resurgence of Steve Jobs' tumor. It's a very pernicious, kills almost everybody that gets it. And they can't find it in me anymore, but they took it out of me. So, and I continue to take prophylactically cannabis. I probably will do it for the rest of my life. I didn't take cannabis until 2014. Well, that's not true. I smoked in the 70s quite heavily, but I hadn't since 1982. And I'm a sober alcoholic. I'm a businessman, and put my mother in a nursing home and moved out here so I could fight my cancer. These men are going to help me do it until the VA pays for it. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue the fight. And I really would appreciate you licensing these gentlemen to take care of us, because it's the road back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address us?
There is a line, sir, if you want to wait for the other speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Colonel Terry Maxwell, and I care about veterans being one. I also care about smart, wise public policy. And as Stephen Brill's book points out, the experience of Colorado with legalizing marijuana as a public policy issue, if you guys could exercise wisdom and be well informed, Santa Cruz County would set the example of recognizing that cannabis should be prescribed by a doctor or a naturopath, authorized to do so, and through pharmacies, and not through helter-skelter on every corner if they could get it, but all over our community, people hustling medical marijuana that we know is going to end up with school children using it. That's the case in SoCal, where you've approved a clinic about 140 yards from where the high school and junior high school students get their lunch off campus. Coming back to public policy issues, Santa Cruz County and this board, if you had wisdom and insight and true justice about the long-term impacts of this on our culture, you'd suggest that you revoke authorizing cannabis sale by anybody but a licensed pharmacist, prescribed by a health professional. That would make it available to service everybody that needs it, including all the veterans. Again, Stephen Brill's book points out Colorado's going to regret what they've got going in a larger way. Why can't you guys set an informed example of true wisdom and restrict this through pharmacies?
Good morning. My name is Shepard Kalantari Johnson, and I'm a member of Community Prevention Partners, a Drug and Alcohol Prevention Coalition. First, I want to mention that CPP has had the opportunity to work with a lot of the local dispensaries, and they've really shown exemplary efforts to try to safeguard against access to youth. This ordinance, I think, strengthens our work to provide access to patients as well as decrease access to youth. There is a big gap that CPP sees, and that is that there are no setbacks, unless I didn't see it. I don't see setbacks for libraries and parks, and that's where youth congregate. I know that we're considering this in the cultivation proposal, and I would ask that the board and staff consider amending it to include setbacks for schools, for parks and libraries. Schools are in there. The other thing I wanted to say as an individual, not a CPP member, is that I've had the opportunity to meet with members of the Veterans Alliance and to visit their site and to ask them about their business practices. And As a public health advocate, I see that they have a lot of strengths, including security plans and tracking their plants in safeguarding against access to youth. Thank you.
Hello, Board. My name is Jason Cadillac. I'm a 100% disabled veteran. I'm a resident in Santa Cruz County. I'm a voter. I'd like to be a taxpayer someday if I can afford to purchase a home. This Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance is a program like nothing available probably in the world. It's the only opportunity for veterans to have a choice, and it's a choice here in Santa Cruz, and it's a good choice. You know, the one thing I love about Santa Cruz is there's lots of compassion here. Have compassion, you know, for a group of veterans, and I mean, they have doctors from the VA coming down here treating veterans that would never step foot in Palo Alto, because the PTSD is something that just, it affects us like right now. I'm nervous. I shouldn't be. You know, I'm just trying to tell everybody, like, this program is, you know, do a little bit of research in it, see what these guys are offering. It's like, it's the most comfortable feeling for a vet to not feel pressurized. I spoke with a lady at the last meeting, and she said her husband didn't leave the house for 2 years. This is the only, you know, the reason he came out, and you know what I mean? And there's no, even as a group of people, like, everybody's just helpful. Everybody just like continues to want to help people grow, and it's just the one thing. It's just the right thing to do. So you know, saying that, I just hope you take consideration with this. And like I said, if you know, as they always say, do your research, and you'll see that this is definitely something that Santa Cruz needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, you can come on up and get in line, if you would. Hurry this along.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. My name is Benjamin Krosky. I'm a disabled combat veteran in the United States Marine Corps. After separating from active duty in 2013, I moved to California specifically to treat my wounds that I had suffered from during my deployment with cannabis, as opposed to the harmful pharmaceuticals that the VA had prescribed me and been so detrimental to me. When I found SCVA in 2014, it was nothing short of a blessing. If you're not aware, over 1.5 million veterans live at least $10,000 below the poverty line here in California alone. And while cannabis has proved to heal both my body and my spirit, it's still the most expensive crop to date in the world. SCVA has not only made it easier for veterans to handle their own personal financial burdens through their Veteran Compassion Program, but horticulture therapy has offered and unsurpassed in this area. Knowing and working with a plant that will someday be the very medicine that one ingests gives you a certain connection and freedom of choice. Now, please understand, I'm not talking about a college dropout who wants to grow pot with an investor. I'm talking about American patriots wishing to heal their wounds that they've received in lands that weren't visited by the 99%. We've made that sacrifice then so that we could gather today to discuss if SCVA has earned the privilege to come home and try their own hand at American capitalism and still donate untold amounts of medicine to your county's veterans. To disallow that to these men and women, but remain to allow back alley dispensaries and unprofessional owners to make millions on unethical and immoral practices is an injustice. I'm so very confident this board will address post haste. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Sir.
Board members, my name is Thomas Evans. I'm a resident here in Santa Cruz County. I'm also a veteran. I served as an infantryman for 6 years in the Army, deploying both to Iraq and Afghanistan. While on a foot patrol in southern Afghanistan on my second deployment, I was wounded by an improvised explosive device. I suffered a severe traumatic brain injury, was peppered with shrapnel, and suffered multiple fractures in my nose and my skull. The Army and then the VA, once I was medically retired, were quick to prescribe me opiates for the pain and other medications to deal with my TBI and my PTSD. These prescriptions left me feeling numb and withdrawn from society, friends, and family, only masking my injuries instead of treating them. I decided to give medical cannabis a try when I found out about the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance in 2014. Since then, I have been prescription-free and feeling much better than I was before. Medical cannabis has helped me tremendously and has allowed me to live a much better life. Many of those who I served in combat with have also found similar success with medical cannabis. As you may know, the recent Veterans Affairs budget bill included legislation that was passed by the House, which would have allowed VA doctors to prescribe medical marijuana in states in which it is legal, such as California. This provision was removed in the middle of the night, and the bill passed through the Senate without it. Vets, now more than ever, will need help accessing affordable medical marijuana. The Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance is the solution to this issue. By allowing SCVA to open a dispensary in town, you'd be helping hundreds of veterans gain access to medical cannabis. It would also allow for the expansion of our compassion program, which currently provides free medical cannabis for hundreds of veterans in the county. Please help us continue to support our veterans in need and provide them with medicine that they so desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. I'd just like to thank you for your time and listen to us. My name is Jake Scallon. I'm a United States Air Force security policeman. I was retired from active duty in 2011 from my injuries sustained in Iraq. When I first came home, I struggled greatly in my transition from active duty military to veteran. I struggled with day-to-day life, finding a job, finding just a community and a peer group and people to know. It wasn't until I began working with Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance and the Veterans Compassion Program that my life began to greatly improve. Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance is the first and only community of its kind that gives veterans an alternative choice, and it also gives them a community to feel welcome. The VA only prescribes, heavy pharmaceuticals that honestly have only made our lives harder and worse. We're just trying to help ourselves and help our brothers and sisters in any way we can. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Carl Sigmund. I'm a member of the Veterans Alliance. I moved to Santa Cruz 2 years ago when I was accepted in senior housing after a long wait on the waiting list. I was served in the United States Navy in 1967 and 1968 in Vietnam service. I want to testify just to this group of people that I am very impressed with how they operate. I went to a presentation at the Rio Theater a few months ago where I became aware of this group. And I've been around for a while, I just realized it was 44 years ago when I first came to Santa Cruz in 1972, how impressed I was with the Cooper House, how impressed I was with the community. And I moved to Monterey about 20 years ago, and I was just living in a very much of a wasteland regarding progressive ideas. And you can feel this community is in the forefront of progressive ideas. This group that I became aware of is one of the most dedicated groups I've ever seen providing medicine to people in the community who benefit from it. We can come up with anecdotal evidence, and you can come up with horror stories all over. But we can see how this movement is starting to come out of the shadows. That's what the Rio Theater meeting was about, that we don't have to try and hide behind, go through the legal practice, threaten ourselves. I knew people who went to jail, of course, when I was growing up in the 70s, and years for cannabis. Bottom line is, I just want to testify to this group. They are actually providing medicine at no cost to these veterans in this community. It's a organization that has given me an opportunity to meet fellow veterans and start to have a social life here. So I highly encourage you to take any action you can to help support this group and fast track them if that's what you're doing here. I stand to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Trey DiMartino. I'm a disabled American veteran from the United States Navy. I injured myself after 12 years of service. The first thing they wanted to do was fill me up with opiates. And I hadn't used marijuana for over 26 years until 6 years ago. I met Aaron, one of the founders of the organization, at Cabrillo. I'm a full-time student, and I am homeless also. I was able to maintain medical marijuana rather than using these opiates and extremely addictive drugs that I have tried just about everything of. And I have saved workers' comp, which I am on, and disability tens of thousands of dollars. In the meantime, I've been to the Dominican over 100 times with pancreas. I've also got pancreatic. I'm sorry. I get a little nervous too. Pancreatic cancer, and it's been maintaining. The marijuana's been maintaining this for 6 years now. I can't say enough about the camaraderie that's shown through this organization. The Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance has been absolutely amazing with the camaraderie and the experiences that I've learned and been able to share with the other members. And I just want to say that nobody's out to make a profit. They're autonomous. I'm sure everybody's out to make a profit. It's a business, but they're autonomous in my feelings, and I think it should be kept that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Khalil Mutawakil, Director for the Kind People's Collective. I just would like to say, first of all, how touched I am, honestly, that all of these veterans have shown up today and given their testament to their experiences. It's very personal to me, the veterans in our country that are underserved, and I think this is one of the few ways that veterans can feel like our society is taking care of them and giving back to them. And at our collective, at Kind Peoples, we do our very best to serve veterans. We provide steep discounts for them. When the Veterans Alliance first got started, we offered our building up for them to have meetings and such. But we don't have the infrastructure set up in the same way that the Veterans Alliance does. So I just wanted to start with that to tell you that my testament here for the Veterans Alliance is much different, and really I only have I have nothing to gain from it, only really to lose business, actually. I understand that we don't want to completely open the floodgates to more businesses and collectives in Santa Cruz, but I don't believe that we are doing that here. This is an organization providing a very unique offering to the community, and it actually complements and works symbiotically with other collectives, such as our collective, Kind Peoples. We oftentimes refer our patients to the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. Now, if this were just a simple black and white situation where a new average dispensary was attempting to jump on the bandwagon, I would not support it. If they were not providing any additional offerings or services, I would say no way. But again, I don't think this is the case. As stated in the last meeting this issue was heard, the Veterans Alliance has documentation as well as a parcel that has been in accordance with the current ordinance that we have. Looking at how the longest operating collectives in Santa Cruz have found their path to opening their doors, which has been very unofficial at best, maybe our collective excluded, that I think it makes good sense to allow a collective to open who has showed good faith in the way that they have. It seems as if we are attempting to close the doors for new collectives in the foreseeable future. So let's not make the mistake of closing the door in the face of an amazing organization affecting change in an already underserved population of our society, United States veterans. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. The support that we get from the community is absolutely amazing, and I'm touched. The stories that you've heard from just a fraction of our veterans is the reason that we do what we do. And I hope we never have to.
Give me your name and...
I'm sorry, my name is Aaron Newsom. I'm the co-founder of the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. To second what my business partner Jason said, we've done extensive research on the new Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act, and we believe that under the new state laws, if we do not have a storefront dispensary, we will not be able to donate medicine to our veterans, and our mission will be at serious risk. What will need to be done is, as a cultivator, the medicine will then, after cultivated, it will need to be tracked and traced, which we are fine with and do already. Then it will need to be given to a transporter, to a distributor, then to a testing facility, back to the distributor, and then finally to the dispensary where it can be sold or donated to the end patient. We have over 350 members in our collective. I know Jason said 256, but we are actually upwards of 350 at this time, and it's growing at a rapid pace. We would love to have the opportunity to serve the local community as well as our veterans. But again, however, due to the state laws, without being given a Phase 1 dispensary license, our mission will be at serious risk. We believe that being pushed to pursue a Phase 2 dispensary license will create a significant hardship because we'll have to find a new location due to residential setbacks, just like a majority of the other dispensaries currently operating. This will put our organization, our mission, and our veterans at risk of being a forgotten population once again. We hope that Santa Cruz County will continue to support us and our veterans and be the home that will allow us the legitimacy we need to continue our mission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, Pat Malo, lifetime county resident, medical cannabis patient. What I'd like to say in regards to the Vets Alliance and this whole dispensary situation that we have is because of how the legalities and just the history played out, we actually grandfathered in my terms, a lot of dispensaries that didn't necessarily have the best community benefit possible. And so we've kind of, said that these group of dispensaries have the blessing of operating here, and so they are kind of operating as a part of the county apparatus because there's only so many of them allowed. And it's sad to see organizations that have real community benefit turned away because of how history played out, and there were 12 or 10 people who may or may not have obeyed the current law who got given the opportunity to have one of these dispensaries in town or in the county. And it's hard because a lot of those dispensaries do a great job. A lot of them give away a ton of medicine, but some of them don't, and we don't have the 12 best. We just have the 12 we were stuck with. And so to close the door on the Vets Alliance, something who offers a different kind of service, like you guys have said, than the other dispensaries, is hard for me to accept. And I hope that when we do reopen this, Phase 2 or whatever of the dispensary ordinance, will go for real community benefit first and foremost. Ryan Coonerty has spoken about giving precedence to, disadvantaged groups, and I think that's wonderful, and I think we should take that a step further and give that just to community benefit. I think that we should open to the idea of real worker-run cooperatives being given priority as well, and really shift and be example for how we can choose what other businesses we endorse in this county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, supervisors and members of the public. My name is Nick Belayich, 305 2nd Street, Watsonville, and I was a C4 member. And I got to say, throughout my years of political involvement, I have two bad habits. I usually get involved in lost causes or interesting causes. This is an interesting cause. It's something that I knew absolutely nothing about getting into C4, and I've become fascinated with the issue. I'm a non-user. I have no involvement in the industry whatsoever, so that rules that monetary aspect out for me, or using aspect. I have a letter for you. It's really just dealing with some minor issues that I think need to be corrected in the ordinance, and hopefully I didn't make a mistake because I typed it very fast this morning. They're just minor issues, which I don't think it's something too major. I think staff could easily address it, but I think it needs to be addressed in the ordinance. As far as the meat of the ordinance, I think what you have there is a very strong ordinance. If someone is a bad operator, they are not going to last. They will get wiped out because there's a renewal process. There's a termination process. You can wipe them out. Bad apples are not going to last in this game, and that's going to apply with cultivation, transportation, manufacturing, distributing, the whole aspect. This is a game change going on at the state level and probably national level and county level, where bad apples will get flushed out. With that being said, and I hate to do this because I don't want to jinx Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance with me endorsing them, but I think you should add them to the list. They are doing something that I don't know if anyone else in the entire country is doing. It's dramatic. And I've been looking at this. I got to meet them during C4 meetings. I thought, whatever, it's just some kind of deal where they're trying to get into the thing, into the game. But I don't believe that. In fact, I firmly believe that what it is they're doing something that is historic. The entire country is going to change. The Veterans Administration is going to change. They have no choice. The deal of just dumping these weird, strange psychotropic drugs into the returning soldiers is a failure. This is an opportunity beyond belief. So I see these signs, keep Santa Cruz weird or something like that. I'd rather say keep Santa Cruz ahead of everyone else in the entire country and approve Santa Cruz Veteran Alliance as a level 1 dispensary. If you're wrong, if I'm wrong, if you add them to the list, if you're wrong on it, what do you lose? If they're a bad apple, your ordinance will wipe them out and they'll lose their dispensary license. But if I'm right, and if you're right in approving them, and if what they're doing is right, you have been at the forefront of history in the entire country. So I urge you to add them as a level 1 dispensary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bryce Berrios. I'm the founder of California Agricultural Association, one of the dispensaries on the list. The reason I came here today primarily was to just tell you thank you. It's been a long road, and we're really grateful that we finally are having the opportunity to be licensed. As you guys are aware, under the new state law, state licensing is imperative upon local licensing, and much of my job the last year has become to be more active in the political process. So I sit on 2 committees with the largest cannabis industry groups in the state. One is the California Cannabis Industry Association and also the California Growers Association. So I spend several hours of my week on calls talking about policy and regulation. And it is absolutely imperative for businesses to have local licensing first. This speaks so much more to the fact why it is important for you guys to not kick the can down the road for the Santa Cruz Vets Alliance. There are some of the 13 dispensaries on the list that are only on there because of their sheer tenacity and non-compliance with what the county wanted at the time, where they weren't in compliance with the ordinance, but they had the right zoning, and they stayed open anyway, and you chose not to shut them down, and now they're grandfathered in. And you have a group that is providing a phenomenal service to our community that is helping people, that meets all of the requirements, and they decided to wait it out and do it right and follow the process, and now potentially are being punished for it. The dispensary owners a couple months ago, I think 12 of the 13 of the operators in the county met. The Veterans Alliance was there. It was news to most of them that they potentially were going to get a dispensary. Not a single one of those businesses were upset or reached out or got frustrated about it, even though it's in none of our interests as a business for another business to open, because it takes our profit and potentially our customers away. But what you'll find is the majority of us are in it for the patients first. And these guys have patients that they can connect with because they're from a culture, they have a background, they provide a service through horticultural therapy, they provide a great service that is an example across the country now. And if you have had the opportunity to see what these guys do, Jason and Aaron have been incredibly politically active, both on the local level and beyond. They've sacrificed tons of their time on the C4 committee trying to help us get good policy. Aaron's spending time on the Watsonville Task Force trying to help shape good policy. These are guys you don't want to turn your back to. And kicking the can down the road, unfortunately, is going to make it really hard for a bootstrapped organization to try to stay competitive in the long run. And they're in it for good reason. So as a competitor of theirs, I'm telling you, it would be a really shame for us to not allow them to open. As a cannabis advocate, I have the most respect for these guys and what they're trying to do, and we work with them closely with our collective, and they work with our patients, and we are just... they're a shining example of what we want in this county. So thank you for moving towards licensing. We really respect it. And with that, I would advocate that you listen to everybody that came up here and support these guys into doing what they do. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to address us on this?
Hi, my name is Letitia Miller. I wasn't here for this particular item, but after listening to all the vets that came up, my husband was a vet from the Korean War. And after he got out, there were major problems. He was disabled. And we did go to the veterans. And at that time, they didn't pay too much attention to our veterans. So for years, my husband was taking Vicodin and Ambien and getting them from local doctors. Well, they survived, but finally we did go back to the veterans, who are very, very active now. And they did help him. And he didn't take marijuana, but he continued on the Vicodin and the Ambien because he was totally addicted. So if there's something out there that you can do, I think you should pass it, maybe for the veterans. I'm kind of torn because I have also a 15-year-old grandson, and it is by the schools. I think you have to be very careful how you give your licenses. I think you have to be sure they're not by schools, not where children play on parks. But then the veterans do need this help, and I'm here to support the veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address us? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. First of all, to say thank you for each and every one of you, veterans, for your service to our country. Sometimes it's just not appreciated enough, so I do appreciate what you have done for our country. Any comments from the Board of Supervisors here? Supervisor Caput.
Well, with item number 84, I don't see anything that we're actually changing something. The recommendation is we put it off, or can we actually amend this right now? We're talking about the United Veterans Group.
The recommendation is that we delay it until the, well, go ahead, delay it to the fall, but we could take other action.
Amendment, or we can't?
Yeah, so again, the item that's before you is the dispensary licensing ordinance. Today's meeting is for the first reading of that ordinance. It would be required to come back for the second reading in August, and then would not be able to take effect for 30 days. So if your board wishes to make changes to that ordinance, today would be the day to do so. If those changes are considered substantive, we'd have to bring it back for a first reading in August and then a second reading later on. But if they're not substantive, if they're just ministerial changes, we'll be able to incorporate them here. So what's being requested is to acknowledge all of the existing dispensaries and allow them to proceed with licensing, and not to include new ones at this time, ones that have not previously operated under the limited immunity scheme. I had the opportunity to spend some time with the veterans group this last month, and I have assured them that we would be working with them to try and figure out how best to address their needs. Our recommendation to your board is that we include them in phase 2, and that we work to develop some process so that all groups could be considered. But again, that is completely up to your board's discretion.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at here is we've been working on this for years, and every time we tweak something, it causes another problem down the line. What I'm worried about is if we don't act on it right now, and my list here that I see is 13. I keep hearing 12. Did we drop one of the 13? We have currently 13 that we're actually recognizing.
Yes.
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 13 is the number. I heard the number 12 mentioned twice, and so it's 13. So with the Veterans Alliance, it would be 14. What I'm getting at is if we decide now, I think we'll eliminate having a line of others coming forward and trying to be included in this. We've seen it happen. We've seen this happen. The more we're working on this and we try to change something, if we don't make decisions now, it seems to get worse later, in my opinion. But and the interesting thing, too, is we're dealing with language that may change, and it may change because of the veterans, because they're federally, they were federal employees, and a lot of them were combat vets, and they have a government that's saying, and we have it in our ordinance, this is what the government, the federal government says. The Federal Controlled Substance Act classifies cannabis as a Schedule I drug, It has a high potential for abuse, has no currently accepted medical use in the United States, and has not been accepted as safe for any use under medical supervision. And I can go on and on here. That is going to change, I believe. I hope it does change. I think we can be part of that change by having a friendly amendment here that would allow the United Veterans Alliance to be number 14 on the list. And then we can also have consideration of other groups maybe later. But I just don't want to have a big discussion in August where we have another group, we have a number of groups lining up, okay? So I would offer that we add number 14 would be the official name of the United Santa Cruz
It's just called the
Veterans
Santa Cruz
Alliance.
Veterans Alliance.
Santa Cruz United Veterans Alliance.
No, United, just Santa Cruz
Okay.
Veterans Alliance.
Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance.
So that's an amendment being offered.
There's no motion.
There's a motion?
Nobody's
Not yet.
made a motion.
Then I'm making the motion
You're making a motion to do what?
to add, make Santa Cruz United Veterans, no, Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance.
You want to adopt the ordinance as recommended?
Adoption of the ordinance as recommended with the addition of the group I'm trying to say correctly. Okay.
I think there'd be more discussion by the board. I don't hear a second at this point. There may be, but in the future. But I think other Supervisor Leopold.
Yeah, I would like to separate a couple different issues here. One is I'd like to thank the testimony, thank all those who gave testimony today, because both the quality of service that you have offered the country and the impact that this is having on your lives is remarkable, and I'm moved actually by the testimony we've heard today. I'm trying to, in working on these dispensary regulations, been trying to find a way to get us to continually to move together, all together, to have as many of us support something as possible. And in doing that, it's sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we come up with something better, and trying to balance a lot of different needs out in the community. So I think that there are sort of maybe 2 or 3 issues here. One is the ordinance as originally proposed, and then the suggestions made by the county administrative officer. I support those changes, including the 2016 date. I think there's a question about Phase 2 licensing and timing. The CAO has proposed that you come back in December, and maybe we should talk about moving that date to something a little bit sooner than December as a way to deal with this. And then, of course, the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. Now, I support the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. I've made a passionate case in past meetings about the Veterans Alliance. And I think that at the end of the day, Phase 1 or Phase 2, I'm hopeful that this board will support licensing of the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. And so what I'd like to do is move the ordinance as recommended, to have the CAO return to us with Phase 2 options at our first meeting in October, based on the qualifications that my colleague, Supervisor Cooney, has suggested. And my goal here is to move us forward with a reasonable set of regulations for dispensaries in Santa Cruz County, and to be inclusive of a dispensary that is clearly doing good work there. But I want to separate those that are operating now and then those that are that we'd like to include. And I think if we move it to that first meeting in October, we will still be enough time to complete the process with the Veterans Alliance, so they will be able to qualify for the MRSA regulations when they're adopted in 18.
Second. So it's been moved and seconded with more discussion.
So I appreciate my colleagues' attempt to figure out the best policy going forward. My only question was the comment that was brought up from community prevention partners about setbacks from libraries and parks. Were they considered? And what's your policy recommendation on that?
So they're currently not included. They're not included in state law either, so it would be up to your board if you wanted to add that. And I'll just also say there are a couple typographical things we would like to fix before you vote.
Well, and my suggestion is when we originally looked at dispensaries and setbacks, when you start adding on things, you significantly limit the availability of where these things go. And if one of our hopes with this dispensary ordinance, that if someone can move to a place that's outside the buffers, then that's all to the good. But if we make that so it's impossible, then I'm not sure we've achieved our policy goal.
Right. That was my question. Is what would the impact be on? Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Friend.
Thank you. And regarding the library and park discussion, we actually had that pretty extensively at the beginning of the dispensary ordinance, actually before you were on the board. And so it was, the reason it didn't come back is that was something that the board had decided not to include. Well, actually, the majority of the board had decided at the time not to include, but it was something that we've moved forward with as it is. And I appreciate Supervisor Leopold's comments, and I supported the motion because I agree in meeting with Jason, and the work that Jason and Aaron are doing is exceptionally important. And it's also something that I think that the board has said time and time and time again, that we are looking for this to be a patient-centered providing service, not a business. There have been people making a lot of money on it. I mean, it's now called an industry. At least we're willing to be honest about it. And there are some that are not looking that way, such as WHAM, for example. And I think that the Veterans Alliance is also serving an important disadvantaged and subpopulation of the vets locally. And I think that with what Supervisor Coonerty is bringing in as part of what we would consider in Phase 2, that alone would also advantage an application such as the Veterans Alliance in working with this subpopulation. I just think that it does make sense to have that separation right now. And I know it sounds very technical in nature, but I think it's very important to separate those that have been through a process, because my office, I know other offices up here have heard from a number of other interested parties that want to open up dispensaries, and so it's very difficult, even when somebody is doing something that fits within the values and what we want to encourage moving forward, to just single them out and add them into the original, even though I think on the emotional side is exactly what at least a board majority up here is interested in doing. But I believe that moving through the process, I agree with Supervisor Leopold's comments, absent something coming up that I wasn't aware about, but in reviewing your materials and meeting with you and hearing about all the work you're doing, it seems like you'll be a very strong candidate moving forward on the Phase 2 component. So that addresses the park library component, and that also addresses why I'm supporting the motion to move up the date, but to not include it in the initial discussion right now. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And the Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance is a special program, and it accommodates special people, as many of whom we've heard from today. But we're today not in a position to offer special treatment, so to speak. But I think this can get us on the track to where we want to be and allow them to be in the system, so to speak, before the end of the year. And that's why I'll be supporting the motion as well. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment. And I understand where we're going with this, and it's okay. I guess with the federal government not recognizing them when they go to Palo Alto or they go to clinics, they're actually told they cannot take this, they can't do this. They're given something maybe far worse. There are all kinds of drugs out there. We're talking about medical marijuana use, and I just was thinking it'd be nice to put it on the fast track rather than the slow track. The slow track will actually accomplish this, I believe. The point I'm getting at is every time we have a meeting on cannabis, we draw a lot of people that come here and want to talk and want to speak, and it seems like this is not going to end. We definitely have to agree on something and finally make a decision. And so I'm just hoping on this particular issue would be fast track, but I'll withdraw my motion. It didn't get a second anyway, so we'll
Yeah,
put it
so
off.
technically your motion did die for lack of a second, so
Okay.
for the record.
And we're putting it off until October?
Yeah, so basically, the recommendation that's before the board is to approve the recommendations as submitted, revising the Phase 2 options for the first, to report back on the first meeting in October, including the qualifications identified by Supervisor Coonerty.
Okay.
And I think there were some suggested changes from County
Yes,
Council.
County Council does have a few technical changes.
You bet.
So Jason Heath, Chief Assistant County Counsel, good morning. We have a couple of typographical errors that we would like to change in the ordinance, and I'd like to read them into the record. The first is at page 5 of 18. In the middle of the page, subdivision 5. After the term ordinance number 5090, there should be an insertion, open parenthetical, now repealed, end parenthetical. Moving forward to page 10 of the ordinance, at the top of the page, subdivision 4, the last line of the sentence should reference 7.130.110 subdivision H3. Jumping down to subsection 6, at the end of the sentence, the reference should be 7.130.110B. On page 11 of 18, subdivision 5 at the bottom of the page, the reference should be to 7.130.110H3. And I believe that's it. And those changes, no, there's one more. On page 16, there are 2 subdivision 3s. We would propose changing the final subdivision 3 to subdivision 4. And those changes will be reflected on the version that you have before you for second reading.
So just openly then, for those, what does that do exactly? Just, it accommodates what we're trying to do here today then?
Exactly. It just aligns. We had to make some numbering changes for the changes that we made to the ordinance that you saw in a substantive regard today. And some of those changes, not all the I's and all the T's got crossed in the crusher business. So that's kind of where we are.
Okay. It's been part of the discussion for 2 years now, but, changes here one way or the other. But, okay, we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
And for the veterans out there, we said hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
You guys know what that means.
We do have a scheduled 10:45 item that's going to not start until at 11 o'clock. And we'll be back here. This gavel's going down at 11 o'clock, so be here if you want to discuss that item. Hello? Is it on yet? Is it on yet? Okay. I want to reconvene the scheduled item before the County Board of Supervisors. Item number 89 is a public hearing to consider taking jurisdiction of an appeal of Planning Commission approval of a Verizon cell tower disguised as an agricultural water tank tower on an agricultural parcel in Selva Beach, application number 141196. Assessor parcel 046021005 is outlined in the memo of the planning director dated June 16th, 2016. There's a Planning Commission April 27, 2016 staff report, application 141196, attachment 1. Planning Commission February 24, 2016 staff report, attachment 2. Minutes of the April 27, 2016 Planning Commission meeting, attachment 3. Minutes of the February 24, 2016 Planning Commission meeting, attachment 4. Letter appealing Planning Commission approval of application 141196, attachment 5. What we will do and how we will proceed with this, we will, and to make it very clear, this is not so much on the merits or the merits of the proposal. This is whether we should be taking jurisdiction as the Board of Supervisors. So I want to make that clear. And the way we're going to organize this is to have the appellant come up and have 10 minutes of one person or whoever would give that appellate 10 minutes, give the Verizon 10 minutes also. Then we'll have public input limited to 2 minutes per person, and then we'll have rebuttal by the appellant, 5 minutes of the appellate, and then Verizon. So we will start with a 10-minute presentation by those who are appealing this.
And if I could just ask Frank Barron to give a few introductory, introductory remarks, and he'll go over the limited discussion today on the jurisdictional basis and what that is. So if the audience could stick to just those jurisdictional issues, it'll expedite today's consideration.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair McPherson and members of the board. Frank Barron, Planning Department here. Your board is being asked to take jurisdiction of a cell tower project in La Selva Beach that was approved by the Planning Commission. This item is an appeal of an April 27, 2016 Planning Commission decision to approve a 48-foot tall Verizon cell tower disguised as an agricultural water tank tower on a 160.3-acre agricultural parcel in La Selva Beach. On May 11, 2016, the appellants, known as the Coalition to Preserve Scenic La Selva, appealed this approval to your board per County Code Section 1810-340. And your board must now determine whether to accept jurisdiction or allow the Planning Commission decision to stand. In deciding whether to take jurisdiction of an appeal and grant further review, your board must evaluate the information provided in the provided by the appellant and be convinced that, 1, there was an error or abuse of discretion on the part of the Planning Commission, zoning administrator, or other officer, and or 2, there was a lack of fair and impartial hearing, and or 3, the decision being appealed is not supported by the facts presented and considered at the time the decision was made, and or 4, there is significant new evidence relevant to the decision which could not have been presented at the time the decision was made, and or 5, there is either error, abuse of discretion, or some other factor which renders the approval unjustified or inappropriate to the extent that a further hearing before your board is necessary. At the conclusion of this hearing, if your board finds that the appellant has established sufficient grounds for your board to take jurisdiction, you may grant a hearing limited to the record of the entire proceedings or decide to conduct the proceedings de novo as if no other hearing had been held. If your board does not find sufficient grounds to take jurisdiction, your board should decide to schedule a hearing and the Planning Commission decision becomes final. Now for some background on the project. There have been a total of 4 separate public hearing dates on this matter, 2 in front of the zoning administrator, or ZA, and 2 in front of the entire Planning Commission. At the first public hearing on December 4th, 2015, the ZA considered the project, heard public testimony, and decided to continue the hearing to December 18th to allow for the installation of a mock-up of the cell tower, of the proposed cell tower, and to allow for additional corrected noticing because the original mailed-out notices had mistakenly said that the project was not appealable to the Coastal Commission, when in fact it is. At the conclusion of the continued public hearing on December 18th, 2015, and after considering extensive public testimony, the ZA approved the proposed cell tower. That approval was subsequently appealed to the Planning Commission by the Coalition to Preserve Scenic La Selva. At a public hearing on February 24th, 2016, the Planning Commission considered a staff report that incorporated and responded to the appellant's initial appeal letter.